Good evening. The March 4th, 2024 legislative session of the Anne Arundel County Council is called to order. Please ensure all phones and electronic devices are set to silent. We will begin with the invocation. Ms. Fiedler, you have the floor.
Thank you. Please stand. Please pray with me in a manner consistent with your faith while I pray in a manner consistent with mine. Heavenly Father, as we face important decisions in this meeting, guide our thoughts and judgments. Help us to consider all perspectives and make choices that are fair and just. Grant us the courage to make tough decisions and the wisdom to navigate complex issues with grace and respect for one another. Guide our conversation to be fruitful, constructive, and without malice as we do the work we were called to do. In your name, amen. And the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, please read the ethics statement.
The Ethics Commission has asked that I advise you that under certain circumstances, members of the public may qualify as lobbyists when they testify before the County Council. If so, the law requires that certain information be filed with the Ethics Commission. The chair of the Ethics Commission has asked that those who wish to testify in any form review the general information lobbying sheet located on the Ethics website under Forms and Publications. If there are any questions about lobbying requirements, please contact the Ethics Commission at 410-222-4413.
Thank you. I wanted to take a quick moment to recognize Delegate Gary Simmons, who's in the audience with us tonight from District 31. Thank you, sir. It is now time for our invitation to audience. We will now, this is an opportunity to speak briefly on any subject not included in the printed agenda. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. There were 2 submissions. Everyone here got an email. It's included. Those are included in the summary that's posted online and will be added to the meeting record.
Thank you. We will now call on individuals who signed up ahead of time of the meeting. When your name is called, please come up to the table and state your name and address before making your remarks. Remarks will be, of course, limited to 2 minutes. And I want to remind everybody this moment in time is for issues not presented on the current agenda. I do have one individual signed up, Miss Mary Guy. Okay, thank you. We'll see you at the appropriate time. If there's anyone else here who wishes to speak, please come up to the table, state your name and address and topic before making your remarks. Seeing no movement in the audience, the invitation to audience is now closed. Is there any item any council member would like to place on the agenda at this time?
Thank you. I would like to withdraw, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the bill number. Is it 1224?
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to withdraw Bill 1224 and bring it back at another time.
Thank you. May I have a motion to change the order and hear and vote on resolution number 6-24 first this evening? Is there a second?
Rodvian, second.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on the motion to hear and vote on resolution number 6-24 first.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to move resolution 624 up on the agenda to vote on first this evening has been passed.
Thank you. May I have a motion that the partial reading of any bill, resolution, amendment to a bill or resolution or minutes constitutes the reading of the whole?
Rodvian, so moved.
Is there a second?
Hummer, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Madam Secretary, please read the minutes of February 20, 2024.
Minutes of February 20th, 2024. The County Council meeting was called to order by Chair Pickard at 7 p.m. It was opened with the invocation given by Reverend Samuel Colbert of Mount Zion United Methodist Church in Laurel, Maryland, and was followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The meeting was held in the County Council chambers in Annapolis, Maryland.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 20, 2024?
Rodvian, so moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The minutes of February 20, 2024 stand approved as read. Madam Secretary, please read the titles of the bills to be introduced this evening.
Bill number 1524, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, capital budget, and program supplementary appropriations. Bill number 1624, an ordinance concerning zoning, uses, food service facilities, outdoor seating related to food and beverage service. Bill number 1724, an ordinance concerning zoning, adult independent dwelling units. Bill number 1824, an ordinance concerning Board of Appeals, compensation, per diem allowance. Bill number 1924, an ordinance concerning zoning, requirements for conditional uses, workforce housing. Bill number 2024, an ordinance concerning zoning, mixed-use districts, requirements for conditional uses, BWI, Fort Meade Growth Area, multifamily residential uses.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I don't believe we have any resolutions for introduction.
There are no resolutions this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution number 6-24.
Resolution 624, resolution confirming appointment of members of the Anne Arundel County Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board.
This is an administration amendment. Ms. Schultz, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Kaylee Schultz from the County Executive's Office. Resolution 624 confirms appointments of members to the Agricultural Preservation Advisory Board. It would confirm Emily Wilson, who is an owner and operator and manages Itawa Farm and parts of Obligation Farm. Stephen Hopkins, who's the owner and operator of Hopkins Farm. Kayla Griffith, who has a background in agriculture. And also John Hauser, who is a registered professional forester. We bring this before you tonight, hopefully that you go favorably on this, and we will offer one technical amendment at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Is there any discussion at this time? We will now open a public hearing on resolution number 6-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on resolution number 6-24? Please come up to the table and have a seat. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on resolution number 6-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please, well, do we have any discussion before we go into amendments? Please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1, this technical amendment corrects a reference to state law.
It does exactly that.
Is there a motion to adopt amendment number 1?
Rodvian, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 1 has been adopted.
There was not any interest in speaking on this resolution before, so Madam Secretary, please call the roll on resolution number 6-24.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 624 has been passed.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of bill number 1.
Bill number 124, an ordinance concerning public safety, animal care and control, potentially dangerous, and vicious animals.
This is a county executive bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor when your panel gets seated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me, I have Captain Jeff Adams from the Police Department and Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. We've discussed this bill a number of times at prior meetings and at a work session. Just to recap, it amends the criteria for designating an animal as potentially dangerous, or vicious, establishes a process for reconsideration of a potentially dangerous or dangerous order, and authorizes the Police Department's Animal Care and Control Agency to waive redemption, adoption, spay, and neuter fees. It also amends specified animal license fees in certain years and requires owners to pay specified costs associated with care for animals that are seized. I know there are a few amendments. We have one, and we'll discuss them at the appropriate time. But for now, we're happy to answer any questions.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues at this time? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing on Bill number 1-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the council, we received 2 submissions. Everyone here did get an email, and they are included in that summary that's posted online. They will be added to the meeting record. It's also worth noting we got a few emails that came directly to everyone. Those will also be added to the record.
Thank you. I do have a handful of individuals signed up to speak. Those folks that signed up, I will call your name. We have Miss Jacqueline Kyle, Linda Mazer, and Chris Weinstein. Okay. As you may be familiar, when it is your turn, please state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. If you have more than 2 minutes to share, I'm going to ask you to submit your additional thoughts using our online testimony tool. You may begin.
Jackie Kyle, 6339 Harris Heights Avenue, Glen Burnie. Good evening. My name is Jackie Kyle, and I'm the chair of the Animal Welfare Council. Tonight, I'd like to clear up the misconception that the Animal Welfare Council has pushed for changes in the vicious dog ordinance in response to an isolated, highly publicized case. This is simply not true. The part of this bill that the Animal Welfare Council has fervently pushed for has been the cost of care portion of the bill. Please vote in support of the amendment number 9 for 14 days. To help shorten the stay of these cruelty cases, which can linger in the shelter for years, we must help these animals. In regard to the vicious dog portion of the bill, when asked to do so, the Animal Welfare Council has given input on draft legislation that originated from the county executive's office. Each time that we have been presented with proposed vicious dog legislation, we have sought to dial back either the levels of proof for designation or to strike the eyewitness or digital evidence requirement. While we did vote to concur with the graduated levels of proof contained within this bill, it was a difficult decision for our members. The deepest concern comes that should be designated as vicious and euthanized will not receive that designation. Now, those dogs will be designated as dangerous and have orders placed on them and allowed to live. While this should keep the community safe from further damage from this dog, it will not protect the family where this dog lives, which may include children and other pets. We acknowledge this risk, and it's one you should be aware of as you make your decisions on this legislation. Vicious dog designations are rare under our existing law. Only 28 dogs have been designated as vicious in over 6,000 dog bite or animal attack cases in the last 5 years. These are the dogs that have done significant damage, such as kill or maim another domesticated animal or human. Traditionally, Animal Care and Control has been trained to err on the side of public safety. This level of proof for vicious designation now favors the attacking dog over public safety. We also support amendment number 11.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Weinstein, 216 Long Point Road, Crownsville, Maryland. I'm the president of Friends of Anne Arundel County Animal Care and Control. I've also been a shelter volunteer for 10 years. There seems to have been a determination based on a single case where the facts have been widely misrepresented that Anne Arundel County's legal standards for declaring a dog vicious are so unusually lax that innocent pets are regularly at risk of being found vicious and euthanized. Not so. First, Anne Arundel County standards are similar to those of all other Maryland counties. Second, they already are rarely applied. Shelter bite officers investigated some 6,000 animal attacks during the past 5 years, and using the existing preponderance of evidence standard, only declared 28 dogs vicious. That's hardly an overuse of that designation. Should the standard for declaring animals vicious be raised to beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest criminal standard, Anne Arundel County will be an extreme outlier among Maryland counties. It's already overworked shelter officers and its Animal Matters Commission, an administrative panel of citizen volunteers with no subpoena powers, will be expected to investigate cases as if they were highly trained and well-staffed criminal prosecutors. Even fewer, if any, dogs are likely to be declared vicious. If you still feel it necessary to raise the standard of proof so extremely high, then give Animal Care and Control the staff and the legal powers it will need to keep the public safe from animals known to be unstable. If it cannot, the day will surely come when a dog who maimed or killed once does it a second time with even more dire results. Then the angry demands will come for you to revisit this law once again to swing the pendulum back in the opposite direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This panel is dismissed. At this time, is there anyone else interested in testifying on Bill 124? If so, please come to the table. We have 6 seats, I believe. Ma'am?
One second, please.
Ma'am, you can state your name and the record and name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, I am Sandra Salvatore, 721 Red Cedar Road, Annapolis, Maryland. I have testified before about this legislation, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue to comment on it. I haven't mentioned before that I have 20 years of DoD policy experience. I've also been a citizen advocate, and I guess you call a citizen lobbyist for the Humane Society and ASPCA in previous years, also with America's Vet Dogs. So, and I've been a dog owner, foster dog owner for 20 years and fostered and gotten successfully rescued and adopted over 20 dogs in that time. I know dogs. And so my concern about this legislation, or the proposal, is still the same, and I feel like we're not quite there. And I had an opportunity to wear my policy hat. I'm also getting a doctorate of law and policy, so it's a good exercise to look at the existing law that the proposal seeks to modify. And I found a couple really big loopholes. It's kind of like we're in the process of trying to put frosting on a Swiss cheese wedge. And so the problem is that it's not going to be cake. We're not going to get to where we want to go. And so, for example, there are no definitions in Section 12.4.101. In the definitions section, there's no definitions for aggressive, minor injury, or severe injury. And so what that means is that there's a process stating, the whole point of this is that there's a process to put in an order and saying that the chief of police or agency and or commission can execute an order, but there's no definition by which that order is being relying on. And so it does seem a bit subjective and fair and improper to try to codify something that is based on nothing, really, because there's no definition, not even use cases. At least in the policy world, we developed some use cases. So the bottom line is I do still feel like this still needs some work, and I would love to be able to help. I'd like to see this tabled so we could spend a little bit more time on making sure, because why I care is because, as an example, very briefly, I was at Love Point last weekend at the Vineyards. My little dog here, give me please just a second to pull up, show you my pit bull, if I can get my phone to work.
Ma'am, you've exceeded our 2 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Well, I just wanted to show you this guy. I'm at Love Point with my pit bull. He's on a leash. People around the fire pit, and a family came up 50 feet away, stopped and froze because they saw a pit bull.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And so I fight for him. I fight for the right. He's the sweetest being on the planet, but people have irrational reactions. So I'd really like to keep us.
Thank you.
I really worry about those people.
Thank you, thank you. Sir,
Yes,
state your name on the record. You have 2 minutes, please.
yes. Ed Evans, I'm here as the chairman of the Animal Matters Commission. I'm here today to speak on, we got the amendments from Ms. Ledbetter late, and we discussed them today. We are in favor of all 3 of her amendments. We prefer the 14-day amendment over the 28-day amendment. And I would just like to close quickly here and say that we also had a discussion on a stumbling block that we had last meeting on this issue. Whoops, I'm sorry. And that was the time frame, 1 year versus 5 years and things like that. We discussed it as a group, as a commission, and we unanimously agreed that the time frame should be totally eliminated and that a reconsideration should be based on a showing of a change in the animal's behavior or environment sufficient enough to warrant a reconsideration of whatever it is, dangerous, potentially dangerous. Bless you. And that will eliminate the need for a time frame, because that can happen, as it was brought up today at the meeting. You can watch it if you want. If somebody has a dog and they're living in a house with a potentially dangerous odor that makes them have to have a fence, and the situations, the economic situations of the individual makes them move to another house that doesn't have a fence, that could happen within 6 months, so or 5 years. So eliminate the time frame and just make it based solely on a sufficient showing of a change to warrant the reconsideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. At this time, the public hearing on Bill number 1-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 1-24.
Bill number 124, an ordinance concerning public safety, animal care and control, potentially dangerous, and vicious animals.
If there is no discussion from my colleagues, we'll move right to amendment number 8. Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 8.
Amendment number 8. This amendment establishes that for certain findings, a designation of an animal as vicious be based on evidence other than solely hearsay.
Mr. Hunt, this is the administration's amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a long and extensive discussion at the last meeting about the type of evidence and the way the bill was written and introduced originally. When it comes to supporting a vicious dog designation, this was intended to clarify the language that was stripped out at the last meeting and just be as simple and straightforward as possible. So what it says is that if you are designating a dog as vicious, which means animal control will seize the dog and euthanize it, you have to have something in addition to just hearsay evidence.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt amendment number 8?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Fiedler.
Is there any discussion on amendment number 8 from my colleagues? Anything else you want to add, Mr. Hunt? Okay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 8.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 8 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 9.
Amendment number 9. This amendment provides that the number of days between the 30-day cost of care payments made by the owner is 14 days.
Ms. Ledbetter, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment does exactly as described. The concern that was brought to my attention is, as currently amended in the section of the bill, by leaving it at 45 days, we would have an owner paying potentially on day 45, which is 15 days into the next 30-day period. The problem not only does that become very hard to track, both on the part of the agency and on the owner, but it does not help. We want these animals to be quickly moved through the system and returned home to, highest quality of life. And so by continuing to extend it, we're really hampering the ability to be able to do so. So the suggestion in this amendment is to change that number of days to 14 from 45. Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second, Fiedler.
The administration, you have the floor.
Oh, we're fine with this amendment.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues at this time? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does that mean the sponsor is going to withdraw the other amendment that's coming if this passes?
Yes, I drafted both, wasn't sure where my colleagues would fall, so I thought I'd give two options and see where we agreed to land.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Secretary, please please call the roll on amendment number 9.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Ms. Hummer. Aye. Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 9 has been adopted.
Ms. Ledbetter?
And I will withdraw amendment number 10.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 11.
Amendment number 11, this amendment requires animal care and control to act in the best interest of the animal in determining the care and shelter provided to animals held by the agency.
This is also your amendment. Ms. Ledbetter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In reviewing the county code regarding this section of the code with our new legislative counsel, it was brought to my attention that there isn't a spot in our code that explicitly gives animal care and control the agency, explicitly states that they have the ability to make the right decisions for daily care and shelter of animals who are impounded, seized, surrendered, or owned by the agency. And it is a best practice to make sure that that is explicit. I see this mainly as code cleanup and motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Rodvian, second.
The administration.
We're
like
fine
to
with this amendment as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any of my colleagues like to comment on this amendment? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 11.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 11 has been adopted.
Thank you. Bill number 1-24, as amended, will be heard again on March 18th, 2024. Madam Secretary, please read bill number 4-24.
Bill number 424, an ordinance concerning personnel.
This is an administration bill. Mr. Hunt, when your panel convenes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table, I have Hannah Dyer, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Ann Badowski and Jackie Atkinson from the Office of Personnel, and Lori Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. Just briefly, this bill has been discussed at a couple prior meetings and at a work session. It proposes recommendations resulting from the Personnel Process Work Group. I'll turn it over to Ms. Dyer if she wants to add anything.
So I'll try and be quick. One of the county executive's goals going into the second term was to evaluate government processes and identify ways that can cut bureaucratic red tape and improve service delivery for our residents. And so the recommendations in this bill were across the board. One of the challenges identified by our department heads in recruiting and retaining and hiring for our positions that support the services that our residents expect. So we know there are going to be some amendments, and we appreciate the conversation over the past couple weeks.
Thank you. Is there any discussion at this time? I know we have several amendments. Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the administration, Ms. Dyer in particular, for the back and forth conversation. And obviously, there are certain places we don't agree, but there have been a lot of places we do, so I thank you for that. I did have a question for you, and this is a little early, but the reason I'm asking you is I want you to have time to think about this, because I'm not quite sure. Amendment 2 and Amendment 6 seem to do some similar things, and if both were passed, it looks like there may be some sort of conflict interplay, if you will. Does the administration, and you don't have to answer me now, have a position on which one would be preferable, if you do? So you can answer now or you can answer later, but I just want to make sure I ask you early so that when we come back, if after public testimony we touch on this again, you have time to think about it.
So I can go ahead. I believe one of the first amendments is one of the two that you're referring to. So if it's okay with everyone, I can go ahead and respond now.
Perfect.
Both of them kind of practically in terms of setting the tiers land in a pretty much very similar place. So we would be comfortable with either amendment. Both of them advance a couple of the recommendations that the work group proposed, but kind of level the second tier or reduce the level of the second tier to the same place. There is, one very minor thing about one of them that we prefer and one very minor thing about the other that we prefer. But at the end of the day, whichever the council feels, is the most appropriate, most comfortable for you all. We're, again, we appreciate all the conversations with all of you about this bill and about those particular two amendments, and are very comfortable with where both of them landed in nearly the identical same place.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, Mr. Volke, you referenced Amendment 2 and 3? 2 and 6, thank you.
Well, before we get into amendments, we're going to open the public hearing on Bill number 4-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Madam Chair, we did not receive anything ahead of time.
Thank you. I don't have anybody signed up to speak on Bill 4-24. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on Bill number 4-24? Please come up to the table and have a seat. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill 4-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 4-24.
Bill number 424, an ordinance concerning personnel.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 2.
Amendment number 2. This amendment lowers the pay rate increase threshold permitted with certain approval.
Thank you. Ms. Radvian and myself are the amendments, are the sponsors of this amendment. Ms. Radvian, do you want to tackle it?
Sure. So basically, it does exactly what Madam Secretary just described. I don't have the original percentages in front of me. Oh, actually, we can read them right here. So we bring the 15% down to 10%, and we bring the 35%.
It stays the same.
That one stays the same. And then, I'm sorry, I better let you handle this one. I don't remember where we landed.
Sure. The amendments always look a little different than they do in the actual conversation and in the code. I believe in conversation with the administration, this amendment lowers the ability of the appointing authority to go above the minimum pay rate to 10%, and then with the, it would allow the appointing authority with the approval of the personnel officer to 35%, and then from 35% and beyond, you would need the approval of the appointing authority, the personnel officer, and the CAO, leaving out the need to engage the county executive. Did I do a good job of that?
Yep.
Hey, all right. All right, no problem. Is there a motion to adopt amendment number 2?
So moved, Rodvian.
Is there a second?
Second.
How does the administration like to respond on amendment number 2?
So as we kind of described earlier, we appreciate all the conversation about this, finding the middle ground here on where you all feel comfortable while also advancing a little bit of the flexibility recommended by the work group. So we're comfortable with this amendment.
Thank you. I just want to say, as one of the sponsors, one of the things that for the last 5 years sitting in this seat, we not only do the council serve as the final fiscal authority throughout the budget process, but we also engage in making sure at every budget season and budget season, we're always talking about positions, adding new positions, and those vacancies that remain unfilled. And I've spent many times with department heads across the 35 plus agencies that are in county government, and we're always concerned with recruiting and retaining the best and brightest to work in county government. And this is a way to give folks, the appointing authorities in those agencies, those content experts that are doing the hiring, a little more flexibility to bring on quality employees. So with that, I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment, but happy to. Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would just make my pitch to my colleagues this way. The recommendation in the bill itself is to allow up to 15% for the appointing authority. That is what I keep in Amendment 6. But what I do have that's different from this amendment is a requirement that the county executive be included at a certain point. So I think that's the distinction when Ms. Dyer said earlier, there's a little bit that we like about one bill, there's a little we like about the other bill. They like that mine stays up to 15%, which gives a little more flexibility. They don't like that the county executive is still involved. On this bill, they like that it lands at 10%, which still gives the flexibility, but they do like, particularly in this one, that the county executive is out. My pitch to you all would just be this. I think that when you get to 50% above the minimum of the pay, bottom, if you will, the pay grade bottom, you start to really give people a significant amount of money, especially when some of these pay bands are $100,000 between one end and the other. I might be exaggerating, but I know there are some that are close to 60 to 80,000 in the band. So you're talking about a significant amount of money. My suggestion would be, look, we absolutely need to give the appointing authority that ability to move a bit. We need to have some oversight when we get outside of that 15% number. That's where we bring in personnel and then we bring in the CAO. But when we get to this really high point where we're talking about 50% or more of the pay band and starting somebody significantly higher, I do think that the county executive should at least be kept in the loop on what is going on. That is not to say that the county executive has to be in the minutia of every hiring detail for the county, but I do think that when you're adding that much to the bottom line, the county executive should at least be aware. He or she is the CEO of a $2.1 billion corporation known as Anne Arundel County. When you are giving compensation to top employees, people that you really want to exceed the bottom level of what the minimum is, I think that's where you start to have this question of who should be involved from an oversight position. I think that for historically in this county, I've not heard that that is an impediment to hiring the county executive being able to have oversight on this very small number of people who are going to get offered at that percentage. So with that, I'd ask you to support Amendment 6, which does a lot of the same things as Amendment 2, but I think still keeps some of the oversight that we've had. Thank you.
Ms. Hummer.
All right. Forgive me for getting a little confused about which each amendment is doing when we talk about percentages. I understand the county executive portion, but what is the difference, either Ms. Pickard or Mr. Volke, what's the difference about the percentages between the two? If we can kind of clarify that a little bit.
So the main difference with percentages is that amendment number 2 reduces the appointing authority's ability from 15% to 10%. Okay. I believe the only other difference is then engaging the county executive at that top band. Did I say that correctly, Mr. Volke?
I think so, but I was going to just kick it to Ms. Dyer because she spends a lot of time with these.
No.
Oh.
You have it right.
I'm very proud of how I've mastered this bill and this amendment, so I'm just speaking. But if you'd like to add anything from the table, that's fine.
No, you totally have it right. I guess if I can just add, and we spoke about this last week as well, the work group intentionally recommended removing the county executive from the approval tiers because the chief administrative officer is the county executive's appointee responsible for the day-to-day operation of county government, and we see the hiring and promotion of employees as one of those functions essential to the day-to-day operation of the county government. And that's kind of just broadly what this bill is about. So that's where that change came from. But again, in the grand scheme of things, we have that one piece from Amendment 6 that we prefer and the one piece from Amendment 2 that we prefer. But at the end of the day, both of these advance the recommendations of the work group, and we're comfortable with either.
I appreciate that description. I would concur with the work group and you, Ms. Dyer, in stating that these are, this affects our non-represented classified employees, so these aren't political appointments. And this is we have a lot of county agencies that are doing hiring on a daily basis, and I just think chasing down the county executive for a signature is just another added bit of bureaucracy. But I'm sure my colleague from District 3 will just have to disagree with me on that. Ms. Hummer.
Okay, just again, I'm still trying to get my percentages right. So Amendment 2 reduces the 15% to 10%. What, Amendment 6 does what to the percentage, Mr. Volke? Keeps it at 15. Okay. But the other changes, percentage changes, are the same in the two amendments. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Volke.
Thank you. I have to turn this on because I know there's closed captioning and people at home who may be watching. We want to make sure they can hear, not us up here talking to each other. So there are some changes in both of them that bring back in a level of oversight with the CAO at certain percentages. I believe, Ms. Dyer, that had gone out. Is that correct?
The tiers, I know that the tiers are exactly what we've discussed, right? It's in Amendment 2, it's 15, 35, and then above 35.
10.
So, I'm sorry, I'm making it worse. 10, in Amendment 2, it's 10, 35, and above 35. And in Amendment 6, it's 15, 35, and above 35.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any further questions on amendment number 2? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 2.
Madam Chair, I just had one clarification. I think I'm 100% straight now, but you would prefer that the lowest tier is 15% and not 10%, but you also prefer the non-involvement of the county executive at the highest tier.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
With Mr. Volke asked this question initially. With number 2 and number 6 focusing on the same areas of the bill, if both were to pass, then number 6 would be the prevailing amendment, correct? Just like budget.
I think that's right, but I just want to make sure Lori is agreeing with me.
To the extent that there is conflict, that's correct. If there's pieces of them that are different, then they would both work kind of together. Yes.
Okay.
The one that's passed later, ultimately, if the language is, it's the same language being modified, that's the one that prevails.
Right, but what we're talking about, there's 2 very different points, so those would prevail in Amendment 6. Correct. Thank you.
Okay, now, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 2.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Nay.
Mr. Volke.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 2 has been defeated.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 3.
Amendment number 3. This amendment requires a review of employee compensation at least once every 2 years.
Mr. Volke, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will turn it over very quickly to Ms. Dyer, but this just requires that there be a review at a certain period of time. Previously, it had been every 5 years. I believe the bill got rid of that and had it sort of on a rolling basis. My comfort level with it was not great, just because I wanted to make sure there was some requirement that at a certain period, a certain interval of time that this review was happening. To be clear, this does not require a class and compensation study every 2 years. Ms. Dyer and I spoke about that. The cost of that would be astronomical. This just requires that there be some review at least at a 2-year interval. So I want to say that on the record, and if you have anything else to add, please.
Thank you. So this piece of the bill actually was not part of the work group's recommendations, but was actually part of a cleanup review that the Office of Personnel and the Office of Law went through at the same time as the work group was making its recommendations. And our intent here was just to, this section previously read as though there was supposed to be kind of a comprehensive review all at one time every 5 years. And in practice, that's not the way that it works. And I think we discussed this at the work session as well. The Office of Personnel is always doing these reviews in some way. They happen around the annual union negotiations. They happen when we get the annual MACO salary surveys. They happen at other times. Individual issues, reclassification issues. So it's just an ongoing process. And our intent with this change in the original bill was just to clean up the language to make sure that everyone understood that it wasn't one comprehensive review every 5 years. So we have talked about this in reading the amendment into the bill. We agree that it does not require a comprehensive review every 2 years. It is something that the Office of Personnel is already doing, so we support this amendment.
Have we read this into the record? Has this amendment been moved and seconded?
Probably not. I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Fabian.
Second.
We're going to arm wrestle next time.
Is there any further discussion on amendment number 3? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 3.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 3 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 4.
Amendment number 4, this amendment removes a modification to an exception to the requirement for county council approval for a change to position control.
Mr. Volkey, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm smirking because this is where the kumbaya moment ends, right, between the administration and the council. So, again, I appreciate the conversation between the administration and myself on this. I think this does come down to a degree in a difference of opinion on how this bill should operate in the code. And I know that this strikes at the heart of some of the findings of the work group. And so I recognize that the administration is going to be opposed to this amendment at the proper time. With that, what I am asking the council to do is to retain position control expressly in the code. And the reason for that is I think that that's a fundamental duty that we have. I think that is fundamental to how the framers of the charter government that Anne Arundel County enjoys thought about government. They thought that ultimately the executive should not have all the power, that there should be a division of power between the legislative and the executive branch. I do hear the arguments from some that the council will obviously retain this authority at budget once a year. We will get, updates on what positions have been added or moved or changed or things like that. But I would like to see it continue to be the way it is now, which is if there is a significant change with respect to positions, it has to come in front of the council. So that's what this does. It takes this to what we have been doing. I recognize that the administration may feel this will slow down the personnel process to a degree. I see that too, but I also don't think that this council has generally been the impediment to hiring. When we've talked about the impediments to hiring, generally they have been outside of us because we usually, from a legislative standpoint, are able to move our docket pretty quickly and do the things that need to be done without a whole lot of pushback. So with that, I would ask my colleagues to support this amendment. I do think this continues to perpetuate the division of authority in the county, if you will, or division of power in an appropriate way. Thank you. Move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Fiedler, second.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues? Excuse me, the administration.
Sure. So it is no surprise, of course, that we're going to propose this amendment. This is kind of one of the core recommendations from the work group. And I guess I'll actually make a point on your last comment about the amount of time it takes to move legislation through. One of the holdups is not just when legislation comes down to council, but the amount of time that it takes to get to that point. Because we don't send individual bills down for every single personnel change. The Office of Personnel is collecting them, and we're sending just a few bills down throughout the year in respect for the other work that you all have on your list as well. But aside from putting that point aside, we also see that there are, it's not just stripping this out or going with the work group recommendation. We think that there's some middle ground we can find here, and we can continue the conversation after this meeting. And we hope that we can find that middle ground, and this is maybe just premature, stripping the entire recommendation out.
Yeah, I actually have started some conversations around a middle ground. We did not get to a place of a solid amendment for tonight, but I think there's an opportunity, as this bill has already gotten amended this evening. It is coming back. I think there is some sort of compromise that we can find in the process to this bill. So I'm going to be a no on this amendment with the hope that we can strike a compromise at our next meeting. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to support the amendment this evening, but I want to say no matter the outcome, I will certainly entertain a compromise conversation after this evening.
Ms. Radvian.
Thank you. You may recall from our work session or the last meeting that I actually am interested in this this concept of removing this altogether. But I think because right now just the conditions of the labor market more generally, if we were at a point where it was really an employer's market, so to speak, where we had lots and lots of applicants and each job was very competitive, but we're a little bit in the opposite. It's a job seekers market still, in that we have openings. I like the idea that, for now, we can, kind of expedite things to make sure that we don't lose candidates in the process. But this is something I think, we should not forget we've done, should the conditions of the job market change significantly.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think there's sort of two sides to the coin, right? There's the idea of, hey, we should seek a compromise, so let's not amend this out tonight. The other side is, hey, let's seek a compromise, let's amend it out, and then let's come back and add it back in the appropriate form. I would I will be on the latter, just because to me, I'd rather take out what I view as a challenge to the fundamental roles of two branches of government, executive and legislative, in different roles, and then come back if we can find that compromise and add it. But at least it signifies the desire of the council to remain a counterweight to the fourth floor in the executive branch. So with that, I would ask for my colleagues' support. But as Ms. Fiedler said, regardless of the outcome, I would like to see where we can get in terms of a compromise on this, respecting that there is a need for expeditious action. There's also a need to make sure that we don't completely erode the foundations of government in Anne Arundel County and how we do things.
Yes, very serious. Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the conversations we've had on this. I just want to reiterate, I am going to be a yes on the amendment, but I'm very much open to continuing conversations to find a compromise in the future. I stand, as we've spoken, I'm stuck between my operations hat on, which really values and appreciates the need for efficiency, but I also take my role as a standard bearer for checks and balances, and making sure that we're doing our job as a government. Government can't always be efficient, unfortunately. There is a place sometimes for inefficiency to make sure that powers are balanced. But that does not mean that my supporting this amendment for now means that I am not open to conversations to find that balance. That's where I stand.
Ms. Radvian.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that the bill as it's written, without amendment number 4, without removing this section, still does provide check. I don't want folks to go home thinking that there is no counterbalance that the council can provide. It's just, it comes at a later point. It comes at the budget process that instead of at the time that the personnel decision is being made. So I don't want anyone to think, we're saying, oh, we're relinquishing this power completely to the executive branch, because we're not. It does hold it. It just is a matter of timing and allows a little bit more flexibility on the front end.
Yeah, I don't know if that was for me to respond to, but yes. And I guess also, I just want to point out that this section of the code is about exceptions to position control. So it's not about taking away or giving back position control. This is about those circumstances that there should be exceptions. One of which that's already in there and not affected by the amendment is reclassifying to a lower grade. If it's equivalent or higher, any amount higher, then there is no exception for that right now. So this amendment does strip entirely that out with no distinction in the middle.
Thank you. Seeing no further conversation from my colleagues, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 4.
Ms. Radvian?
Nay.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Nay.
Ms. Hummer?
Nay.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 4 has been defeated.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 5.
Amendment number 5, this amendment requires the County Council to approve any modifications to the classification plan before it becomes effective and removes a prohibition against the County Council modifying the classification plan when it is presented for their approval.
Mr. Volkey, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So similar to the last amendment, again, this gets into what the role of the county council is with respect to the classification plan, with respect to reclass outside of budget, and who is in charge of what. So if you look at the bill as written, bottom of page 3, top of page 4, for anybody following along at home, the classification plan is approved annually by the county council, but then on the top of page 4, the personnel officer can modify the plan during the year based on review. And then modifications are effective upon approval of the CAO and shall be included in the next plan presented to the council for approval by ordinance. Upon approval of the modifications to the plan by the CAO, personnel officer may assign people into these new classifications, fill or hire the roles. And the county council may reject modifications made to the classification plan since the last approval, but may not otherwise modify the plan. So what this does is takes out some of these things and changes some of them. Specifically, it notes that instead of the approval falling in the executive branch with the CAO, it falls to the county council. And instead of saying that the county council is not allowed to otherwise modify the plan except for rejecting modifications, it allows the council to make those modifications in addition to just rejecting things that were done during the last year. I hope I've accurately covered it. I think I did. So that's what this does. And again, I see this as, I recognize the administration is opposed to this, but I again see this as we continue to be a check and balance in terms of where we sit versus where the executive is. And as I've noted before at our last meeting, I think the aggregate impact of these changes is the concern I have. It's not the individual one time of a reclass to somebody, taking them to a higher pay grade, saying now they're going to get a higher number in the pay grade in terms of their salary. It's the aggregate effect of that, because when all that comes together, and then you have COLAs that are tied to that based on salary, and you have pension contributions that are tied to that based on salary, those things become non-discretionary funding. So then when we get the budget, we're told by the budget office, these are non-discretionary items, you need to fund these. And so we've now increased some of these costs, and it could even be significant, and they're adding to the cost that we're being told to fund every year at budget, and we have very limited authority to be able to be the actual fiscal final word, if you will. So again, I think this preserves that balance of power, and I'd ask my colleagues to support, move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Ledbetter, second.
Does the administration have a response?
So once again, I don't think the sponsor is going to be surprised that we would ask you to reject this amendment. This is the very similar principle to the last conversation we had about the reclassifications. We certainly want to continue the conversation. We know there was a lot of conversation at the last hearing about, maybe this is goes a little bit too far for the council, but there is a lot of room here for finding middle ground. And I also just want to point out that not all of the changes to the classification plan are related to salaries or spending. And, we have things like minimum qualifications that are part of the classification plan. And the changes proposed in this amendment would, again, basically go back to the way that we do things currently while still maintaining the classification plan outside of the code. But in terms of the process of approving changes, would go back to the way that we do things currently. And I would like to continue the conversation again over the next week or so to find, where exactly the balance is and find the middle ground, understanding that it's probably not where this amendment is, and it's also probably not where the bill is as introduced.
Are there any additional, Ms. Rodbian?
Thank you. This is really a question, I think, for Office of Law. So as the bill is written, it says the county council may not otherwise modify the plan. Is that, are we allowed to put that in the code to sort of take that power away from ourselves?
Lori Blair Klassen, our Deputy County Attorney. Yes, and many plans that come before you, land use plans, are an up or down vote, and it's a take it or leave it. Correct. So it's not unusual with this type of thing.
But we didn't want it to be an up or down vote. That's why it's written the way it is.
Any further questions from my colleagues on amendment number 5? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 5.
Ms. Rodvian?
Nay.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Nay.
Ms. Hummer?
Nay.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 5 has been defeated.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 6.
Amendment number 6. This amendment modifies the pay rates that may be approved for hiring and promotion of employees and requires the Chief Administrative Officer and County Executive approval of certain pay rates on hiring and promotion of employees.
Mr. Volkey, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we talked about this pretty extensively on Amendment 2. I won't belabor the point. I think everyone understands the percentages and the distinctions between these two amendments. I would move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Ledbetter, second.
The administration?
Yep, we're comfortable with this amendment as discussed previously. We would prefer that the county executive were not reinserted, but really we're comfortable with this amendment.
Is there any, Ms. Rodbian?
Thank you. Again, I have a clarification question. I want to make sure I understand the effect of not passing the amendment. So the current thresholds are 15, 35, and 50.
No. So it's 15% for the appointing authority. This is currently in the bill.
Okay.
15% for the appointing authority, 15 to 50 for the personnel officer and the appointing authority to approve. And then above that, all three,
Okay.
appointing authority,
Okay.
personnel officer, and CAO.
Okay, so it would leave it at the 50 without this amendment, but it would.
Right. Without this amendment, it would
right.
stay 1550.
Thank you.
And above
Thank
that, CAO.
Ms. Rodbian? We can always come back with an additional amendment to take the county executive out.
Okay, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Is there any further conversation on amendment number 6? Madam Secretary, please call a roll on amendment number 6.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 6 has been adopted.
Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 7.
Amendment number 7. This amendment provides that the changes to the hiring pay for non-represented employees applies only to non-represented employees in the executive branch and provides for certain pay standards for hiring in the legislative branch.
This is my amendment. This amendment says exactly what Ms. Corby just read. Motion to adopt.
Rodbian, second.
Does the administration want to comment on this amendment?
Nope, this has to do with pay for the legislative branch, and we don't feel that we should have a position there.
I don't either. So for my colleagues, this is just inserting some language that makes sure the legislative branch has our own autonomous role in setting salaries for our non-represented classified employees here on the council, and removes the CAO and county executive from those conversations. Happy to answer any questions. Ms. Fiedler.
So section C, the first part of this amendment, I just wonder how, so we advertise for positions. How would that work if we advertise a range, but then aren't able to meet a number in that range? Am I reading that correctly?
Well, these are for our classified, non-represented employees.
Right.
What do you mean?
These all have a range, right, within
Correct.
the county?
Mm-hmm.
So based on the amendment, we could not go higher than the minimum for the grade if the funds, we can only go higher than the minimum if the funds are available.
Correct.
So my question is, if we are in the hiring process and someone, a very qualified candidate wants the top, and we say, no, we can't do that, but because we don't have the funds, should we maybe consider changing the grade range so that we're not advertising a range that's not attainable?
I'm not 100% following it. Ms. Badowski, would you like to help us out here a little bit? I'm not following the question. We have the legislative branch has our own set of classified employees, like
right,
legislative management assistant. So you would, if we stumbled on a candidate that we wanted to hire outside of the pay band, above the pay band?
At the top of the pay band. Unless I'm reading this incorrectly. It says that initial appointments at a pay rate exceeding the minimum pay for the grade if the funds are available.
You want to phone a friend?
So here, you have to finish reading this. An employee on the LG pay schedule shall be hired at the minimum pay for the grade, except that the appointing authority may make initial appointments at the pay rate exceeding the minimum of pay for the grade if the funds are available. So the appointing authority can pay an applicant outside of the minimum.
Understood.
Oh.
But I think for me, the amendment suggests that there would be a scenario where we don't have the funds to pay above the minimum. And my question then is why are we advertising the range if there's the potential that we couldn't meet the height of the range? And I think Madam Auditor is also offering to be a friend to phone in.
Oh. Madam Auditor, you have the floor.
Michelle Belair, County Auditor. So we currently follow the exact same process as the executive branch. So if I want to hire someone for a classified position above the minimum, it goes to the personnel officer, the CAO, and the county executive. So this would keep that approval within the legislative branch. So we have the funds. The funding, it would be the criteria. So by nature of it being in the budget, we have a position that we can recruit for and would advertise it as such. And we can create that range based on what we're expecting. Sometimes we do create a hiring range for the positions, but when we make that offer, it would no longer go to the chain of command through the executive branch.
Understood. With you saying that, it makes sense. But I do think that there is the potential for confusion.
I actually had to read it a couple times myself when I saw it. When you see it within the code, I think it looks clearer. But it says the appointing authority can approve that salary as the person that signs off on that to hire above it.
I think the bigger question is one of budget and how we plan the council budget annually for our staffing needs. I think your question lies more in budgeting.
I don't think that's...
If we were to we have to budget our staffing in a way that anticipates not just paying employees at that lowest rate. We have to budget it with a more real-time, real sense of how we're going to, how either we're currently filling those positions or how we intend to fill those positions.
Understood, yes. I think that this could just be interpreted differently, but I yield to my friend on the phone.
Mr. Volke.
Don't we currently budget for the lowest number in the pay grade when it comes to us in budget?
And Badowski Personnel Officer, generally, yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
They assume that
Okay.
you will offer the base. Right.
Okay. So with this, I think where there's some concern, at least if I'm understanding correctly, is the first line. An employee on the LG pay scale shall be hired at the minimum pay for the grade, period. That's the first concern, right? Are we allowed to hire above that? And then it says, yes, you can hire above that, but the funds have to be available. I think that's kind of a requirement for every position that's hired in the whole county. My question would be, is there anywhere else in the county that we use that specific language to say if the funds are available? I mean, do we know of anywhere else in the personnel code sections that talk about that?
I'm not sure if it's outlined actually in the code, but as part of the approval, right, that we would say, based on our number of vacancies, a department would say, based on the number of vacancies that we carry, we have the money in our budget to offer 10% above a base.
Right.
Right.
Got it. So that would be something that now we're not coming to personnel and the CAO and asking about. Now we're instead sort of policing ourselves, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Who is the appointing authority for the auditor's office? Would the council still be considered that, or is the auditor considered the appointing authority?
I'm the appointing authority for my office.
Right.
In the
So,
legislative.
got it. So what this would do is this would allow the auditor to be able to hire people within these constraints, but these would be things that you would do without having to go to personnel and CAO and get all those approvals. Is that right?
Correct, but
Okay.
have already came to the council for funding and approval.
Understood.
All the things that we've discussed.
The position already came up in budget, but the
Correct.
question of filling the position and who gives the approvals once that position has been advertised, interviewed, and you've made a hiring decision, that falls within your office.
That's my understanding of the amendment, but it would be great for them to confirm, because currently we go to personnel.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, I think that's how we understand the amendment.
Okay. And then with respect to the legislative branch itself, is the appointing authority the administrative officer? Is that who that's considered for internal legislative pieces?
Correct.
Okay.
For the
Got it.
classified service.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 7.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 7 has been adopted.
That concludes our amendments for 4-24, correct? Okay, just want to
Madam
make sure.
Chair.
Oh,
I just want to say something.
oh, Ms. Hummer.
So they already left before we can recognize them, but we did have a BSA troop here, and I wish I could apologize for them that the meeting that they came to was a very dry discussion on personnel that is incredibly important, but it's not the most exciting thing in local government to be watching. So, but we appreciate them coming and seeing the legislative process at work.
Yeah.
They got a hint of animal
Bill number 4-24 will come back before us as amended to be heard on March 18th, 2024. Okay. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 6-24.
Bill number 624, an ordinance concerning General Development Plan, Region 2 Plan.
This is an administrative bill. I'll let you convene your panel, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me, I have Christina Pompa, Cindy Carrier, and Sam Myers from the Office of Planning and Zoning, and Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. So this is the first of our region plan bills, and I will turn it over to Ms. Pompa if she wants to make any additional comments. I know we talked about it pretty extensively at the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Christina Pompa from the Office of Planning and Zoning. I do feel like we did a lot of talking during the work session, and we're happy to entertain any questions you may have.
I'd like to ask my colleagues, if there's no objections, to have a joint public hearing on Bill number 6-24 and Bill number 7-24, combining those public hearings, which are both related to Region 2. Fantastic. We will now open the joint public hearing on bills number 6-24 and 7-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Madam Chair, would it be okay if I just read the title of both of those just for the record?
Of course. Thank you.
Bill number 624 we did do, but it's an ordinance concerning General Development Plan Region 2 plan. And Bill number 724 is an ordinance concerning comprehensive zoning, and that's Region 2 as well. And in terms of testimony that we received ahead of time, we did not receive any for Bill 624 through the testimony tool. We received one for Bill number 724 through the testimony tool. We have gotten a good slew of emails that I'm still trying to get through, but I have not seen any for the Region 2 bills.
Thank you. We do have speakers here tonight for both bills 624 and 724. I will call your names. We can seat 6 at a time. I have Kevin McPartland, James Lurch, Tracy Yaus, Kira Wheatley, and Kyle Walls. I'm going to ask each of you to state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. If you have more than 2 minutes to share, I'm going to ask you to submit your additional thoughts using our online testimony tool. Sir, to my right, or to my right? Yes, you have the floor.
My name is Kevin McPartland, 2885 Jessup Road, Jessup, Maryland, and I'm a member of the current Stakeholders Advisory Committee for Region 2. And I come here in support of the message that's been presented and as presented. I was also a member of the Jessup, Maryland City Small Area Planning Commission 20 years ago. And yes, I enjoyed the process. So, in both cases, the concern was to preserve the rural character of Jessup. And there is a problem with that because there's a principal arterial road going through Jessup, which is Route 175. And it's one step from a freeway. An additional concern is there's a lot of tractor trailer and commercial traffic on 175 because the Baltimore-Washington Parkway south of that is close to commercial traffic. So they all get off at 175. So this has created changes within the community of Jessup. And these changes have accelerated in the last 20 years, mainly through the growth of Fort Meade, but also through the growth of the advisors and the stuff on National Business Parkway, the contractors there. And in fact, just a few years ago, National Business Parkway was extended north to connect with 175, creating a relatively new traffic light that is very busy and a lot more traffic. So this created changes in the character of this portion of Jessup. And the committee addressed this by looking at the north side of Jessup Road and seeing that there were commercial uses there and extending those commercial uses. Looking at the south side and seeing that there was W1 uses there and extending those.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is James Lurch, 7123 Ohio Avenue. I hope everyone's doing well this evening. I'm the owner of the property, and I would just like to read a brief email that I had sent to the Honorable Pete Smith. As the property owner of 7123 Ohio Avenue, we support the zoning request change by Anne Arundel County to W1 zoning. As a side note, I am the 4th generation owner of the property. The property has been in my family since the 1800s. My great-grandfather and his brothers built the farmhouse that currently sits on the property. the new zoning request changes in line with our future plans for the property. The property was always W1 zoning. And somewhere in the 1980s, I don't know if it was a planning and zoning request, but they changed half the property to open space. So what we're faced is we have a mixed-use property, and I am in the metal fabrication business. I pick up metal components that you would use to build carports or build small metal structures like small garages. I travel all the way to South Carolina, and I bring them up on a trailer, and I'm just getting too old to do this, to be honest with you. The W1 zoning would allow me to perform the light fabrication of bending straight metal into, for example, trusses, roof trusses, and that type of thing. And I don't want to sound like a developer, because I'll leave this with you. This was done back in February of 2020, before any of this came to light. When you're dealing with family and there's multiple family owners in a property, things can get nasty. So everything in this purple area is what's W1 zoning, and everything that's in the blue area is open space. And in order for me to build the building I need to build, it would be sitting on the old strawberry patch when this was a working farm, and my cousins would crucify me for that. But anyway, I'll leave this. So I'm in support of the zoning. I hope everything goes through as planned.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
I'm Tracy Yao, 7619 Ray Road, Hanover, Maryland. I brought my husband with me because he's a better speaker, and he also sent an email into Mr. Smith that
John Day, 7619 Ray Road. The zoning change will impact family property. It's been in our family for 3 generations. Currently, you access it from the front on Ray Road and on the rear from Yaus. Our family name is Yaus. The property at the rear, there are currently 3 building lots in the rear of the property, and 2 of the lots are already in the planning and design phase. Our 2 oldest children, our son and our daughter, are both putting a single-family dwelling on one of the 2 properties. The other lot, the 3rd lot in the rear, is going to be developed within the next 5 years by our youngest son. We're not in the design phase with that, but he will be putting a house there. My wife and I live in her grandfather's house. Her father, my father-in-law, is across the street. Every house on Ray Road is family, uncle, cousin. And we have never wanted townhouses on that property, nor will we ever want townhouses on that property. It's family property. We have no desire to sell, have never had a desire to sell. And as I stated in a letter to Council Member Smith, as long as my wife and I are breathing, the property will not sell, and we'll come back and haunt the kids if they sell it. We just wish it to be left R1 single family. And that's our only request. We have no problem where if you do it anywhere else, just please leave our family's property alone. We would appreciate that very much. Our children would appreciate it. Our grandchildren would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
This panel can be dismissed. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on Bills 6-24 or Bills 7-24, basically Region 2 plan? Sir, you may come forward. Sir, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the
Good
record.
evening. My name is Gary Muller. I've been living in Jessup for 73 years. I first started in land use in Anne Arundel County with Councilman Ted Sophocles 40 years ago, and been involved in land use ever since as a planning commissioner, a county or town commissioner, and a member of the Growth Action Network and the Jessup Improvement Association. The Jessup community, and we've asked Pete Smith to hold a town hall meeting January of '23. The meeting was finally held last month, and we had 50 or some, 60 some people came out and gave Councilman Smith the earful, and they do not want to see the changes that this group of people, the developers who served on the Region 2 SAC are proposing. A lot of the people in the Jessup have been blindsided by both the plan and the zoning bill and also the consistency bill. Pete has informed us that we would have weeks to work with him and get amendments to the council. And we hope that you would respect that plan that we have is to work diligently catching up, because we basically were behind the ball. But the community, the 60-some people that came out, and the smaller committee that I put together to work the details of the zoning code changes are adamantly against what we're seeing. Some members were just totally shocked that their property went from R1 to C1. They didn't even know about it. Other people along 175, one gentleman has an old historic Sears house. He had no idea. People are not being informed, and it's unfair on a consistency bill because of the increased taxes that these people will see. They're upset about it.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Matt Minahan, 3651 First Avenue, Edgewater, Maryland. Madam Chair, council members, I have some real concerns, as Gary mentioned, about this Region 2 plan. I sat in on a couple of those Region 2 meetings, and I got to tell you, of the 10 people in the room, 4 were professional full-time developers whose job it is to build things. And the other 5 or 6 people were part-time citizens, woefully underinformed about the kinds of things that were being discussed in this panel. As a result, I believe that the Region 2 recommendations grossly exceed anything that the residents of this region are interested in. The citizens who were not developers were attentive and eager and earnest, but underinformed, particularly against the firepower of 4 full-time lobbyists and builders. And so they made the cases that were impossible to oppose. And as a result, I think this particular panel, and I've complained to the county executive about this particular SAC was ill-formed and resulted in recommendations that I'm hoping the council will scrutinize carefully and put your thumb on the finger on the side of those who are opposing these major land use changes. You've already got a development zone around Fort Meade. You've already got that. I don't think you need anything else other than that, though I do look forward to the affordable housing bill that's due to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The public hearings on bills 6-24 and 7-24 will remain open through until March 18th, 2024. We don't have any amendments, do we, at this time?
Not, Madam Chair.
So what the plan of this council is to hold the vote on both. We're going to have to do this on both bills, so hang with me as we just go through the procedure. May I have a motion to hold the vote on bill number 6-24 until Monday, March 18th?
I would like to make a motion to hold bills 6 and 7-24 till March 18th.
Oh, we can do that at the same time.
Sure, we can, instead, we were going to do them as separate motions, but instead we're going to do them, we want to do them as one motion?
I'll withdraw that motion. When we come back to 7-24, I'll make the motion to hold that one until later this month as well.
Okay.
So motion to hold bills 7 or 6/24 till March 18th.
Is there a second?
Second, Fiedler.
Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll on the motion to hold the vote on Bill 6-24 until March 18th, 2024?
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey is absent. Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 absent. The motion to hold the vote on Bill number 6-24 until March 18th, 2024 has been adopted.
I'm going to do that again. You want to do that?
Motion to hold Bill 7-24 till March 18th.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on the motion to hold Bill 7-24 until March 18th, 2024.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to hold the vote on Bill number 724 to March 18th, 2024 has been adopted.
We're going to move on to Region 7 at this time. Bill number 8-24 and Bill number 9-24. Madam Secretary, you please read the title of those two bills.
Yes, Madam Chair. Bill number 824, an ordinance concerning General Development Plan, Region 7 Plan. Bill number 924, an ordinance concerning Comprehensive Zoning, Region 7.
Thank you. This is an administration bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table for Bill 824 and 924 are Christina Pompa from the Office of Planning and Zoning, Cindy Carrier, and Patrick Hughes from the Office of Planning and Zoning, and Kelly Kenny from the Office of Law. As was said, this is for Region 7. We are happy to answer any questions from the council.
Are there any questions? Ms. Rodvian?
I don't have a question, but could I take this opportunity to comment?
Of course.
Thank you. This is really for folks in the audience that are concerned about Region 7. I know there has been an enormous amount of discussion about what's happening or what possibly could happen in the Ridgely Avenue corridor, and I just want to let folks know that I am not entertaining any requests for zoning changes in the Ridgely Avenue corridor. There will be one amendment that I'm planning on bringing forward to the regions, so Bill 924, with respect to Region 7, but it is in a totally different part of the region. So my plan is to leave the Ridgely Avenue corridor alone, and I just wanted to publicly state that on the record.
Okay. Ma'am, this is our business meeting, and I'm here to hold decorum in the chambers. Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing on bills number 8-24 and 9-24. We do have folks signed up. As I call your name, you may come forward and be seated. Let me be clear, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited. If you have more than 2 minutes to share, I'm going to ask you to submit your additional thoughts using our online testimony tool. I have Gordon Rosler, Stasia Rosler, Kurt Karsten, John Lagrateria, thank you, Nancy Guy, and Mary Guy. Are there enough seats? There are. Thank you. Mr. Rosler?
Gordon Ressler, 1878 Lindemore Drive. Lindemore is a neighborhood that's accessed by Ridgely Avenue. I appreciate Councilwoman Rodvian's statement that she's not entertaining any changes to the Ridgely Avenue corridor zoning. I'm here to ask that that remain the position of the council and that any variance requests by individual landowners along Ridgely Avenue be rejected There are other opportunities for changes to be made to the zoning, such as by the county executive. Ridgely Avenue is within a development policy area designated as a neighborhood preservation. The requested commercial zoning variances are inconsistent with neighborhood preservation. Variances that have been requested will cause numerous hardships to neighbors. The runoff from existing impermeable surfaces would be exacerbated by commercial development. Other environmental impacts would include damage to our wetlands from the runoff, continued fouling of our waterways, reduced tree canopy, and reduced green cover. Also, additional traffic development along Ridgely will create significant traffic congestion, which is already impacted by openings of the Weems Creek Swing Bridge, Naval Academy Stadium events, and church events. Widening of streets, on the other hand, would require taking of land on each side of Ridgely and would further increase impermeable surfaces. Sewage and water services will not support additional commercial development. Unlike Region 2, Region 7 was made aware early by a community meeting that was called by OPZ. We really appreciated that heads up, and since then we've been working hard with them to express our concerns, many public hearings and submissions to the OPZ website. As a result, the Region 7 plan submitted by OPZ recommends refusal of variances. We ask you to please continue to support that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Kurt Karsten, 51 East Lake Drive, Annapolis, and I'm here on behalf of the Bay Ridge Civic Association, BRCA. BRCA owns 3 properties that have been the subject of discussion during the comprehensive zoning as CZR 7 Bay 001, 002, and 003. The association and the community of Bay Ridge are happy to be here in support of the planning advisory boards and the Office of Planning and Zoning's recommendations on all 3 of these parcels. As you may know, Bay Ridge is a small 100-year-old community of just over 400 homes located on the Annapolis Neck at the eastern end of Forest Drive. While we are small, we have a deep commitment to the bay and to other natural resources that surround our subdivision. The 3 parcels of ours that are the subject of the current zoning exercise were all acquired through our community's grassroots-based conservation efforts and are a testament to that commitment. The first, the property at 2 Herndon Avenue, where our community pool and pool house are located, came to us in 1999 from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. At that time, BRCA successfully approached CBF to relocate its headquarters to Bay Ridge to help prevent the construction of 60 new houses on the old Bay Ridge Inn site and to help preserve forever approximately 15 acres of wooded area adjacent to the rest of our forested land. Planning and Zoning, the Strategic Advisory Committee, the County Planning Advisory Board, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, BRCA, and Bay Ridge residents at large all agree that 2 Herndon Avenue should retain its C2 zoning. The second 2 properties, what we call the Big Woods and the Beaches, were purchased by the community in 2002 at the end of a successful 2-year battle to defeat a plan to build 160 houses on the remaining forested land in Bay Ridge. We raised $5.5 million to protect forever this land. Almost all of this funding came from the community of Bay Ridge. I'm happy to say the Planning and Zoning, the County Planning Advisory Board, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, BRCA, our conservation easement holder, and the Bay Ridge Committee all support R2 residential zoning for these 2 parcels.
Thank you, sir.
One point, I would ask that everyone here stand who's from Bay Ridge that supports these comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am. Miss Nancy Guy.
My name is Nancy Guy, 605 North Bestgate Road.
I just said Nancy Guy because it was next on my list.
No?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nancy Guy, 605 North Bestgate Road. I oppose the 8-24 bill and urge the county council to reject the bill as well. The PAB recommended against it, and so should you. There was no discussion of the PAB's role or recommendation in the plan. and was drastically changed by the Office of Planning and Zoning before presentation to the council. This bill is just another way for Anne Arundel County and developers to pressure Anne Arundel County landowners into unwanted development. The Anne Arundel County Economic Development Corporation will aggressively market the Weems Creek community to developers, which will cause massive change forever. This bill will cause the loss of a quiet residential neighborhood, bring high-density, low-income housing, bring traffic congestion, including bus traffic along the corner of Ridgely Avenue and Bestgate Road. It will also introduce unwanted commercial business, cause all sorts of pollution, especially to our storm waters in Chesapeake Bay, killing sea life for which the area is well known for. The fiscal note for this bill shows no fiscal impact, does not acknowledge development costs that always requires taxpayers' funding, example, infrastructure and services such as public water and sewer, new improved roads, schools, fire and police protection. I strongly urge the council to please reject Bill 824. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. I have Miss Mary Guy next.
Mary Guy, 605 North Bestgate Road, Annapolis. The theme here tonight should be conserve, preserve, and protect. I strongly oppose both bills, Bill 824 and 924, and we appreciate Ms. Rodvian's support. We're strongly opposed to all the zoning changes, including the upzoning to C2. We support maintaining the current R2 zoning. We recommend downzoning, the SB parcels to R2, as they may have not have been appropriately zoned, as Ridgely Avenue is a connector road, not an arterial road. The Ridgely Avenue and Reeves Creek community is a residential community, not a commercial one. Commercial uses are not warranted. We have enough shopping now for the foreseeable future, given the changes in manners in shopping, dining, working in the office, etc. Retail is not needed. Plenty of is available within a short distance. As previously said, the infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, public safety does not support additional intensity. More built environment, impervious surfaces, and the degradation of the environment are not warranted. Weems Creek, Ridgely Avenue must be conserved, preserved, and protected. Development for the sake of a coffee shop or dry cleaners, as has been presented before, or to line the pockets of developers, zoning attorneys, etc. Is it really worth that? Look at the cost benefit. It's not worth the destructive, everlasting, costly, and negative impact on the environment, the residents, the taxpayers, and the future generations of Anne Arundel County. I implore the council to reject both bills in their entirety and maintain the natural landscape and residential community. The mantra needs to remain conserve, protect, and conserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lagretaria. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great name.
Appreciate it. John Lagretaria. I live in the community of Lindemore on the Severn. I'm Anne Arundel resident for the last almost 30 years. I'm pivoting because of the wonderful news Ms. Rodvian shared with us, and I want to thank you and appreciate and recognize that. I absolutely think that's the right cause of action. And I'm just going to speak, rather than from my original, as I said, pivoting to just a real-world scenario that gives you a little ammunition. So my wife and I moved from Crofton, where we lived for over 20 years. Wanted to get water access, moved to Lindemore on the Severn. We bought kayaks. We wanted to be active and access the water. When we first moved here 7 years ago, walked down to the main pier, dropped the kayaks in at any time. Low tide, mid tide, etc., no problem. Well, we've since learned, of course, there's challenges from runoff from 50 and from the medical centers, etc., and the silt, it all ends up in our Cove of Cork. So we have had to dredge once. We wanted to do it more, but there were some challenges with permits. And we dredged 4.5 years ago, I think it was 5 years ago, someone might correct me, and gotten the levels back to a more reasonable state, and now they're overdue. At low tide, I can't even put my kayak in the water at our main pier, and it takes 1 inch draft. So that's how acute and real world the challenge is for us. That's without any development. That's with a 125-year-old community, which we are, just the way things are with the natural buffers that are in place. So to open it up and change along the Ridgely corridor, it all funnels right down into the Cove of Cork, because that is the low point of that entire community. So I thank you for your recognition of that, and I hope that kind of puts it into a real world scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you skipped me.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
Rossler.
Stacia Ressler.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Stacia Ressler, I live at 1878 Lindemore Drive. I'm also part of the Lindemore community. And I'm going to adjust my remarks given Ms. Rodvian's very welcome public commitment not to entertain any variances along the Ridgely corridor. Our community has worked very hard with OPZ, and I really appreciate especially the contributions of Patrick Hughes. We worked very hard to come up with the plan that is set before you. And we wish for you to support Region 7's Plan 2040 as submitted by OPZ, and do not support commercial variance requests by individual landowners along the Ridgely corridor. OPZ has publicly stated that there is no additional zoning needed in Ridgely because there is already enough capacity in the county to satisfy Plan 2040's needs. As my neighbor here stated, we have documented evidence showing that the large commercial impermeable surfaces of Ridgely west of Route 50 drain into our cove, causing both siltage and erosion, such as our own expense we're having to do this really expensive dredging. And sometimes the county is very difficult about giving us the permit, so I would like to ask you to please give us the dredging permit when we ask for it, since we're doing it at our own expense. Our cove is a natural recreational resource that we enjoy, and the deep water moorage also forms part of the value of our homes. So if the county wishes to continue giving commercial variances on Ridgely, then the county should assume the cost of dredging, or at least perform an environmental impact before you ever consider allowing any more commercial on Ridgely. The famous indigenous chief Dan George said, "It is hard for me to understand a culture that attacks nature and abuses her. I see my white brothers going about blotting out nature from your cities. I see you tearing things from the bosom of Mother Earth as if she were a monster who refuses to share her treasures with you. I see you throw poison in the waters indifferent to the life that you kill there. So I ask this council not to blot nature from our cities, not to throw poison in our waters, but to support the OPZ recommendations and not to support any further requested commercial variances for the Ridgely area. Thank you for your time, and thank you again to OPZ for their hard work in working with our community."
Thank you. This panel is dismissed. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on either Bill 8-24 or 9-24 at this time? Sir, state your name and your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Stephen Waddy. My family has property at 1221 Washington Drive, going down Arundel on the Bay Road. And I've been going to that part of Annapolis since I was a child. I have pictures of my grandfather, great uncle there. And I just want to say that, you know, the plan talks about equity. The plan talks about equality. The plan talks about, I guess, diversity. And I just want to be sure that the plan actually acts on that talk. Because down that road, if you go down Washington Drive, which is named after Booker T. Washington, you also hit other parts of that community, which was an all-black vacation town that is now turned to, is gentrified. It's become all white for the most part. So recognizing that, I think the plan, when I spoke with OPZ before they started on these plans, I mentioned the fact that they need to be aware of gentrification. They need to protect communities. They need to have zoning that puts in place protections for black communities and making sure that white communities don't receive the same protection that they received in the past. To consider race, to make sure that race is a consideration and not ignored. And so I want to make sure that this plan continues along that route. I know that it's very difficult for this county to do that. And it's been since 1660 an issue. And I know that, it's going to continue to be an issue, but that's something that I want to be sure that you all recognize, from Bay Ridge to Arundel on the Bay to Highland Beach.
Thank you, Mr.
as
Waddy.
well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waddy. Ma'am?
Thank you. First, I'd like to say my name is Dorothy Guy, 605 North Bestgate Road. I did sign up in advance to speak at tonight's hearing. I find it disingenuous that by combining these bills, you basically cut everyone's testimony time in half tonight. Also, before you adjourn these two bills, would you please let the public know how many comments you've received in writing before tonight's meeting, and whether those comments support or not these two bills. I firmly oppose both of these bills and ask the council to reject both of them. The Ridgely Avenue, Weems Creek area does not need to be developed, and the point of these bills is to intensify and develop this entire area and basically turn it into a de facto parole town center by allowing much commercial development, including high-rise, low-income housing. This is not warranted for this area. The predominant zoning here is low-density R2 residential zoning. That zoning should remain. All requests to upzone properties here to small business or commercial should be denied. Further, the existing small business zoned properties should be looked at again and should be downzoned to R2. There's no proof that when these properties were zoned small business, that they were zoned small business properly. To call Riverview Avenue a commercial node is laughable. There's a bar, a car and boat junkyard there, and one antique shop that's really not much. To commercialize this area is going to increase environmental harm. There is absolutely no public sewer on Ridgely Avenue. This plan just totally denies that. It overlooks it completely. I oppose the Village Center, please give me a minute, Village Center and sector plan here, because the point of doing that is to develop this area.
Thank you, ma'am.
OPZ admits that in the plan. It says it wants to develop the area and have the Anne Arundel Economic Development Corporation market the area to developers. The purpose
Thank you, ma'am.
to commercialize this whole area. The
Ma'am.
neighborhood does not want that. So please respect the community and reject.
Ma'am, your 2 minutes have passed. Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Julie Johnson, P.O. Box 6634, Annapolis, Maryland. I have a whole lot of concerns, and number one, it's wonderful that the people in Lindemore got letters from OPZ to tell them that there was going to be a meeting on February 6th of 2023, and that, please come because you're going to learn about all this new zoning stuff they're going to do. And these are the stakeholders. These are the most impacted people. Well, that's wonderful, except the only problem is that invitation only went to people, the owners north of Route 50. And golly gee, I happen to be about 4 or 5 houses just south of Route 50, right on Ridgely Avenue. And I don't like to give you the bad news, but there have been 2 fatalities in this century. One was in 2005, and it was Alvis Griffin. And then I can't remember the name of the other person, but that was a few years later. Ridgely Avenue has some bad turns. It's narrow, and people speed, and there are some really serious issues. In addition to that, my neighbor Ed Hooper went to get his mail one night sometime I think it was the 1970s, and he got hit by a car. Well, I'm grateful he didn't die, and that he could still get around and everything. But there are problems with the structural engineering, and there's a real problem with being able to adjust widening the 4 roads that are within that original proposal. Anyway, let me go back to the point. I wasn't notified, neither were any of my neighbors if we were south of Route 50. There was, the notice and the explanation was gibberish. What is a development policy sub-area? Who's making the policy? What are the criteria? Where do we find this? What are we doing here? I don't know. So I tried to, you've missed my opinions on the village
Thank you, Ms.
center.
Johnson.
But look, excuse me. The Riverview Avenue thing is a crisis because nobody mentioned that at all.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Well, but people are going to sue.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. This panel may be dismissed. I don't know if we can do that.
I was not going to let this go by.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Normally, we do talk about how many submissions we received through that online testimony tool. Would you like to hear that information?
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the council, we got about 15 submissions through the online testimony tool for bill number 824. We got about 14 submissions through that testimony tool for bill number 924. And again, this is another one where we got a good amount of emails and trying to cross-reference ones who did take the time to go to the testimony tool. Still working on that, but I do want to acknowledge that you all received some emails from residents in these regions as well.
Thank you. We are going to be keeping the public hearings for 824 and 924 open as well. I did want to ask my colleagues if there was any further discussion on these bills this evening. Yes, Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you. Since there are many folks in the audience here that live in Region 7, I just want to take the opportunity to sort of talk about the topic more generally. I'll try and make this quick because I know we have other legislation to address tonight. First, I think someone from the administration can confirm, but I believe that these bills, both the land use plan and the comprehensive zoning plan, are required by state law. So we must pass something. So I want to make that clear, that we have to pass these bills. We do not have to pass them with requests for increases in density in places where where we don't feel that they're needed. And I believe that the plans and the comprehensive zoning for Region 7 that was submitted by the Office of Planning and Zoning is very respectful of the wishes of the neighborhood, including the Ridgely Avenue neighborhood. And I actually had no idea there were so many Bay Ridge folks in the audience as well. So I want to address you and let you know that I confirmed with Office of Planning and Zoning that the current land use plan and the comprehensive rezoning plan respects those, and someone gave the numbers of the properties, but the R2 and the C2 zoning that was discussed and agreed upon by the community. So I want to let you know that. I will say that I don't want to ignore a really big elephant in the room that you may not be aware of if you haven't had to try and rent an apartment or purchase a house anytime recently. We have an enormous affordable housing crisis in Anne Arundel County. We are about 13,000 units short. And part of this is families that have lived in the county for a very long time and are being priced out of their own homes. But we also have growth in the area, including around BWI, Fort Meade. We have in Annapolis, we have the state government, the county government, the city government, we have St. John's University. We have a lot of institutions that bring people to our area. So the idea here is to create density where it makes sense. And in Region 7, the place where it makes sense to have high density is the Parole Town Center. And the county spent a lot of time creating Office of Planning and Zoning, again, actually spent an enormous amount of time formulating that plan, and that will be an area of higher density. I'd also like to thank my colleagues because they supported that plan that includes 10% requirement for anything going forward that is considered a moderately priced dwelling unit, because affordable housing is really what's lacking the most. If you want to go out and find a $600,000 home right now, there are plenty, but if you want to find an apartment for less than $2,000 a month, good luck. There's just not very much. So I wanted to address that. The Parole Town Center area is also near transit that already exists, including Route 50 and 97. It will also add an additional hub that is in the planning stages. So we do have to grow. Not everything can stay static when our population is growing, but we're trying to be smart about where we put the growth. And I really want to just give a shout out to planning and zoning for being wise about making those choices where it makes the most sense. Because in order to maintain the environment that we really care about, we have to be willing to go up. So if we only spread out, if we only have sprawl, we will lose all of our beautiful forests. And I think that's something that we all value here. So we have to accept that there will be places that go up and have higher density, which means a little bit more traffic. So that is the compromise that we have to make, and to be reasonable and say, yes, there's gonna be a little bit more traffic on Riva Road, but we get that. We get people that need housing, we'll have housing, and we'll be able to keep our forests and hopefully increase the amount that people use transit and try and get people out of their cars. So I just want to give that explanation. That's been the thought process for all of these different things that have come up tonight. And if I didn't address something that you would like to talk about, shoot me an email. My address is on the county website. And thank you to my colleagues for indulging me in this little spiel to my constituents.
To be clear, these are the first bills representing our region planning process, and this is the first time we're having public hearings after the GDP conversation. So we've just concluded the public hearing on bills 8-24 and 9-24. At this moment in time, we do not have amendments. I don't know if there's interest in my colleagues bringing back up the Office of Planning and Zoning to talk about the region in any way, or if we're just going to move on with holding the vote.
I'm not seeing any, so,
Yes.
no, holding means like delaying it, not having the vote tonight. So putting it off.
Excuse me.
Sorry, Madam, let Madam Chair speak.
Thank you. Are we ready to make a motion to hold the vote on bills? I think we can make that motion together this time. Make a motion to hold the vote on 8-24 and bills 9. Oh, you need to read them back into the record.
Sure, yes, I can read the titles. Would you like me to do that?
Please read the titles of bill 8-24 and 9-24, Madam Chair.
Bill number 824, an ordinance concerning general development plan, Region 7 plan. Bill number 924, an ordinance concerning comprehensive zoning, Region 7.
May I get a motion to hold the vote on bills number 8-24 and 9-24 until March 18th, 2024?
Rodman, so moved.
Second.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on the motion to hold the vote on bills 8-24 and 9-24 until March 18th, 2024.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to hold Bill number 824 and Bill number 924 until March 18th, 2024 has been passed.
Thank you. Both bills 8-24 and 9-24 will be back before this council on March 18th, 2024. Okay. No, it's okay. This is new. This is a whole new process, and we have to figure it out. Gentlemen, Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 10-24.
Bill number 1024, an ordinance concerning retiree health benefits trust agreement.
Thank you. This is a county executive bill. Mr. Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table is Chris Trumbauer, our budget officer, and Lori Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. This ordinance was discussed at the work session. The purpose is to approve the amended and restated retiree health benefits trust agreement for Anne Arundel County, Anne Arundel County Community College, and the Board of Education, and the Public Library Association of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. It approves the amended retiree health benefits trust agreement to enable the County Board of Education to join the county's OPEB trust consistent with the FY 2024 approved budget. As was stated in Bill 6823, this legislation does not stipulate future county investments into the OPEB trust, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of my colleagues at this time regarding Bill 10-24? Thank you, Mr. Volke. You may have the floor.
Thank you. We're going to save money on this bill. That's what it says.
Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. First, let me just say I'm pleased to follow something as boring as land use with something as exciting as a retiree health benefits trust, so it's my pleasure to be here. But yes, I'm very pleased to agree with you, Councilmember Volke. This will save the county money in the long term because as we build up this retiree health trust, it's essentially paying down the future liability because we will be getting returns on our investment, whereas the alternative would be to be paying cash straight every year. So this is good fiscal policy for the county to include the Board of Ed because we have to pay for it anyway under state law. So this is going to maximize the way we can minimize our payments, if you will.
I always like it when you and I are on the same page.
I much prefer agreeing with you than disagreeing with you.
Is there any further discussion on Bill 10-24? Panel, don't move. We'll now open the public hearing on Bill number 10-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
We did not receive anything ahead of time, Madam Chair.
If there is anyone here who now wishes to speak on Bill number 10-24, please come up to the table and have a seat. Seeing no movement, the public hearing on Bill number 10-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 10-24.
Bill number 1024, an ordinance concerning retiree health benefits trust agreement.
Is there any further discussion on Bill 10-24? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 10-24.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volke.
With a special thanks to Mr. Trumbauer for sitting around for 2 hours and 7 minutes for this bill. Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 1024 has been passed.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 11-24.
Bill number 1124, an ordinance concerning crimes, civil offenses and fines, possession or discharge of firearms, property of another.
Thank you. Ms. Rodvian, this is your bill. You have the floor.
Thank you. This bill is actually doing something that I think is really simple, that I think all of us would expect is already something that we take for granted, but it basically puts into law a prohibition on firing a weapon across someone's property. There's already prohibition without having written permission from that property owner. And there's already prohibitions, all different kinds of things related to this. But the one thing that the current law doesn't really put in place is a prohibition to have bullets flying across your property. I think that's something we all take for granted, should be something very basic, that you should be able to walk around your property without having to worry about bullets flying across from it. But currently there's not any sort of penalty in our local law that allows law enforcement to basically stop someone or give anyone a citation for engaging in that behavior. And I personally, I'm grateful that this was brought to my attention. I know I learned about it from one particular constituent, but it's actually something I've heard about in at least 2 other districts where folks are building makeshift firing ranges and not necessarily being mindful of where their bullets end up, and sometimes with rather high power firearms. So this basically gives law enforcement a way to make sure that everyone has the right to enjoy their property without bullets flying across it. And I ask for your support.
Thank you. Would the administration like to give comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ethan Hunt for the administration. With me at the table is Lori Klossmeyer from the Office of Law. Just very briefly, we're supportive of this legislation. We think it's a good and very reasonable idea.
Is there any discussion from my colleagues on Bill 11-24 at this time? Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's the penalty? Is it a Class E civil offense?
I think it's what's the I think it's the $500. I'm so sorry. I was actually even looking at this. I don't think it's actually in the bill because it references another part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to look in the code on my computer, and I have a feeling I'm not the only one in the room doing that. Okay, I have it here. This is part of, there's violations, or there's a fine already in place for other violations that are related to this. And so what I'm seeing here in 9, what happens when you start working on a bill 6 months ago, and then it comes to.
If I could, I think it's 91101. It's a fine not exceeding $1,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 6 months or both for anything under that article.
Thank you very much. And the bill does allow an officer to give a warning before a citation because people may not be familiar that this law exists. They may think they have permission, but actually do not have permission. So I think that's very generous. I know that not everyone would like that, but I think it's a fair way to start.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Blair-Klausmeyer, so this sort of falls under the general, if we don't say it's something else, this is it in 91101.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And I don't see anything more specific. That's
Yeah, I didn't
flipping
either,
through. It's
but
hard on my
that's-
phone, but I didn't see anything more specific.
Well, I'm on my computer and I'm getting the same results.
Okay.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious how, so there's firing across property. How do you know where the firearm was fired from? How will law enforcement know what person fired? How do we know that just because an individual discharged a firearm and there was a directory across someone else's property, how do we know that the person who fired that firearm is the person who resides at the address? And it couldn't have been someone trespassing on their property. How do you determine? Because I imagine that the neighbor who finds the casing or hears it, or there's some sort of evidence of it, if they're on their property finding it, they couldn't have also been in the location where it was allegedly fired from. So I'm curious where the evidence is other than assumption. And so that makes me concerned about, even after a warning, even with a warning, doling out a consequence.
So I think it's fair to say that this exact issue is something that law enforcement deals with all the time, is trying to put together what actually happened factually. It is entirely possible that the person firing was within sight distance of the person who owned the property across which the bullet flew. So there may be, this is the, I mean, I think I just have to go back to saying law enforcement does this all the time. And they may not be able to issue a penalty or a warning in every situation if they can't pin down exactly where it came from or who it came from. But they will investigate it the way they investigate any other possible infringement. Could I request any additional thoughts from the Office of Law?
I think that's basically, it would just be the investigation. Maybe eyewitness may not be, and it'll be up to law enforcement to determine.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a reason the police department wasn't here? Where are they at on this?
I think they're supportive of it. They just had a scheduling conflict. I think Mr. Shire couldn't make it. So.
Okay.
Yep.
At the work session, they offered their support.
Yeah.
And actually, I worked on this bill originally with Major Passman, who has, of course, now since retired. This is where the long gap of time has come from. We started with a slightly different path to getting this outcome and realized that there were some problems with it. And this kind of removed some of the problems. So that's why I withdrew that bill and reintroduced it as this one.
And does the sponsor know, was it originated from the police? Was this something they were asking for as a capability to address this issue?
This really came from a constituent, and I think we may hear about it in the public hearing. So I ask for your support.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing on Bill 11-24. Madam Secretary, did we receive any testimony through the online testimony tool?
Yes, we did, Madam Chair, members of the council. There were 4 submissions made through the online testimony tool. Everyone here got an email. Those are included in the summary that's posted online, and they will all be added to the record for Bill number 11-24.
I do have one speaker signed up in advance. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak on Bill number 11-24, please come up to the table and have a seat. When it's your turn, state your name and address for the record. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. If you have more than 2 minutes to share, I'm going to ask you to submit your additional thoughts using our online testimony tool. Mr. David Bathurst was signed up in advance. I don't see him in the audience. Mr. Evans, you're welcome to. Okay. All right.
I signed up in advance.
I
signed up
in advance. Oh, I don't. Okay. Thank you. Oh.
11-24, right?
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. My name is Ed Evans. I live at 769 Old Harold Harbor Road in Crownsville. My family has a 6-acre plot. My sister-in-law lives on the street. She's got the first 3 acres, and we are way in the back on the rear 3 acres, way back in the woods, like a log cabin in the woods. Although it's not a log cabin. Anyway, I have made nature trails all through the rear of the property. It really looks nice. My neighbor on the other side, who would be here tonight, except that he has
stomach cancer and had an operation, or else he'd be here with me tonight. He noticed that there was a piece of land that I didn't have any trails on. And he said, why? And I told him I couldn't determine where my property was out there, where the property was. He said he had an app on his phone. He'd be over the next day to help me. Ironically, it was a year ago, this past Sunday, that this event happened. He came over, he found the pin, and he said, I got it, it's right here. He said, find a nice big limb and we'll pound it down and mark it. As I walked up the hill to retrieve the limb, this happened. Right over my head. I could hear the branches flicking, the brush flicking, and it would not stop. It just kept going and going and going. Now, eventually, it stopped. We both hit the ground. Eventually, it stopped for a little bit. We ran around the other side of the property, went up to the house, we called the police. The officer that responded, unfortunately, acted like he couldn't be bothered with the situation. He basically got on his laptop and showed us section 91-601 of the county code, which allows somebody to discharge a firearm as long as they're not within 100 yards of a structure or camp occupied by human beings, which doesn't make any sense to me because, as everybody knows, a bullet discharge is going to travel a lot further than 300 feet or 100 yards. So,
Mr. Evans, I'm going to have to ask you to summarize. That was your 2 minutes.
I'm getting there. So the bottom line here is he showed us that, said that's the law. We don't have a problem here unless somebody gets shot, and then we have a problem. His exact words. And with that, I kind of went nuts because I could have had my head shot.
Thank you.
And I looked this up, and I really, section 1811-153, it's about rifle ranges. I would really appreciate if the council would consider putting that in the law. If you're going to discharge a gun, that would if you're going to do a shooting range like that.
Thank you.
It would keep us safe.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
This is the last call for testimony on Bill 11-24. Seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Bill 11-24 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 11-24.
Bill number 1124, an ordinance concerning crimes, civil offenses and fines, possession or discharge of firearms, property of another.
Is there any further comment? Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know our state and federal legislatures have a lot of legislation with regard to firearm and criminal law. In the examples given this evening, does the state or federal law have anything that pertains to this particular scenario of?
Lori Blair Klassmeyer, Deputy County Attorney. So the state law does have some regulation of firearms, obviously, but this is an area where they have actually delegated authority to the county, and it says, the state law says that a county, municipal corporation, or special taxing district may regulate purchase, sale, transfer, ownership, possession, and transportation with respect to minors, and there's also a section that says, there is a section on discharge. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. Second page. The county may regulate the discharge of handguns, rifles, and shotguns. Yeah, but there's other provisions that deal with sale, possession, that sort of thing. So with the discharge, it can be regulated by the county.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let's step back for a second from just firearms, right? Laws about firearms. Let's talk about shooting at another person, right? Okay. So I pulled up Criminal Law Code 3-204, which is in Maryland state law, and it says a person may not recklessly, 1, engage in conduct that creates a substantial risk of death or serious physical injury to another, or 2, discharge a firearm from a motor vehicle in a manner that creates a substantial risk of death or serious physical injury to another. I can't possibly see how the officer couldn't have looked at someone firing a firearm towards someone else and say, that's not reckless endangerment, right? And I don't even see a mens rea component here that would have said you have to know that somebody was there, right? Just the recklessness of firing a firearm, not into a backstop, not knowing where it's going, not knowing where your discharge is going. Seems like the police could already have charged a crime that would have substantial penalties under state law. So I guess when I'm looking at this, and I kind of had this weird law school hypo that came in my mind, like, is this now going to be a lesser included? Is this something the state's attorney is going to charge every time there's a discharge of a firearm? Like, if you stand in one property and you shoot somebody in another, is this going to be sort of the bottom line offense? So I think there's some questions with that, but I guess my struggle with the scenario that we were presented with that kind of is the impetus for this is I already think the state has the tools. And if that officer came out and looked at it and didn't think to charge that, then I think maybe that's an opportunity where the police department can go back and look at this and say, maybe we do need to think about how we're dealing with these situations. Maybe there already is a law that exists that helps us. I'm not quite sure how this moves us to a place of criminalizing an act that, quite frankly, has always been criminalized. You can't discharge a firearm at another person. If you hit them, you're at a minimum attempted murder, some kind of homicide type crime. And even if you don't, there are lesser included crimes that exist in the state. So I guess that's where I'm struggling with this is like, it seems to be that we already have solutions, and maybe in that particular instance, somebody didn't see the solution, but it didn't take long to find it. So those are my comments.
So I have a question. I don't know if it's for the sponsor or for our representation at the table, but it seems to me if this activity is going on across private property that doesn't belong to you, whether or not someone is standing in their property with the threat of being hit by said discharge of a bullet, I mean, the noise, there's all kinds of other nuisance acts related to these sort of makeshift gun ranges on other people's properties without, you don't actually have to step onto someone else's property, but whether you're hearing the gunfire from your house and it's affecting you. I mean, this is sort of, I was under the impression that was what this bill, it was more of a nuisance bill than a gun control bill, because we have this nuisance and danger is occurring in 3 or 4 different communities in different districts in our county. Is that correct, Ms. Rodvian?
That is my understanding.
Mr. Hunt, do you have anything to add to that?
That's my understanding as well.
So this is another tool in the toolbox for our local law enforcement and property owners to protect themselves and their property from both dangerous discharging of weapons and rifles and just the nuisance of noise. Correct? Okay.
Yeah, and I think really it's kind of, I mean, it's a very fine line talking about regulating firearms, but I actually see this more as regulating bullets and where bullets go. It's one thing to, be the person that has a firearm in your hand and to fire it, but it's another thing to have your bullet taking a path across private property. So to me, this is really, I feel like there's a Chris Rock thing about bullet control, and this is really about bullet control.
Any further comments or questions regarding Bill 11-24? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 11-24.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Hummer.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
And Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Bill number 1124 has been passed.
Okay. Is there any other business to be brought before the County Council at this time? May I have a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry, it's a question to the body, not to the audience. Thank you.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The county council is adjourned until March 12th, 2024, when we will meet for a work session. Sorry.